Hello, and welcome to the Center for Democracy and Technology's 101 training on cybersecurity in education. In this training, we hope to give state and local practitioners like teachers and administrators the tools they need to protect their students and communities by securing the data and technology systems they use. To that end, we'll talk about the importance of cybersecurity in education, some relevant terms and definitions, and best practices for protecting data and systems. First of all, let's talk about why cybersecurity is important. The harms of inadequate cybersecurity in education aren't hypothetical. Attacks on schools have put students, families, and staff at risk of real harm. Exposure of sensitive personal information, like social security numbers, puts them at risk of financial harm like identity theft. Breaches of home addresses put school community members at risk of physical harm, and ransomware and denial of service attacks rob students of critical instructional time. Schools need to take cybersecurity and data protection seriously to reduce the risk and severity of this kind of damage. Protecting students and the rest of the school community requires both privacy and security approaches. While there is some overlap between these approaches, they serve different purposes and require different techniques. For the purposes of this presentation, we'll use the following definitions when we talk about each approach. Privacy is the idea that people should be able to control their own information, and that the entities that are authorized to collect and use that information do so in ways that respect an individual's autonomy. This often means things like having clear rules about when and how data is used, and incorporating community perspectives when setting up a data program. Security is the practice of preventing unauthorized access to information in the systems that hold it. This may mean things like having rules about minimum password strength for user accounts in the school to prevent unauthorized access. For both privacy and security, everyone plays a role in keeping students safe. Because everyone who interacts with a system, whether that's an administrator managing classroom assignments or a teacher planning lessons, can accidentally expose a system to harm, all of those users have to take steps to ensure they do their part to keep data and systems safe. This means, for example, that every user has to keep their own account secure, so it doesn't get taken over by an attacker who might manipulate or leak data. Any teacher who adopts a new app for teaching should work with their information technology team, or IT for short, to make sure the app is safe. Any community member who gets a suspicious email should follow up with technical staff or a trusted administrator or teacher to make sure it's legitimate. All of these actions play a key part in keeping the whole community safe. As part of playing your role in system security, we're going to spend the next few slides talking about keeping your account safe. Keeping user accounts safe is an important part of the security of the overall system for a few reasons. First of all, when users keep their accounts safe, unauthorized users or malicious attackers can't use a legitimate user's access to leak data or damage the system. Second, when each user keeps their own account safe, and that includes not letting other users log in as you, even if you trust them, then IT and other technical staff know exactly who has access to the system and its data. This means that they can make sure that everyone using the system gets the training they need. Finally, many systems keep records, or logs, of who accesses data, when and how data is changed or deleted, and other information about who is using the system and how. These logs are important for recovering from errors and ensuring access policies are followed. When users keep their accounts secure, it keeps these logs accurate, so they are reliable when technical staff need them, such as when recovering from a system outage. Because account security is so important, let's talk about some best practices for maintaining that security. Passwords are a particularly important part of keeping accounts secure because they are the first line of defense when it comes to making sure that you are the only person who can access your account. Unfortunately, strong passwords are long and random, which makes them hard to remember. This leads to some common user behaviors that make passwords less effective. First, users who do use strong, complex passwords may forget them, forcing them to reset their passwords regularly. The difficulty of the password reset process itself can pose risks. If the process is too easy, then it can be abused by attackers to reset a user's password to something of their choice, and that can allow them access into the system. But if the process is too onerous, it will be inconvenient to users who need to use it, either frustrating and inconveniencing them, or pushing them to use other insecure workarounds like writing their passwords down or reusing passwords. Second, users might write their passwords down. If they do this in a shared space like a classroom or teacher's lounge, this can lead to unauthorized users or attackers finding and stealing their password. Finally, users might reuse the same password for multiple accounts or systems, so they only have to remember one password. Unfortunately, this means that if an attacker gets access to that password, they can get into all of those accounts, potentially causing much greater damage than if they only had access to one account or system. One way to make passwords much more effective is by using a password manager. Password managers are tools that safely store all of your passwords, protected by a single primary password. Because you don't have to remember them all yourself anymore, you can select stronger passwords for each account. In fact, most password managers can generate strong passwords for you, as well as assist you in entering them by autofilling them on websites or making it easy to copy and paste them, as strong passwords can be frustrating to type. Because these tools can address some of the shortcomings of passwords, they can be a powerful security tool. There are some considerations when using them, though. First, a user's primary password needs to be strong, because if an attacker gets access to a user's password manager, they get access to all of their passwords. Second, if a user forgets their primary password, they can be locked out of all of their accounts. Fortunately, many managers have systems like recovery codes that users print out and store in a safe place to help mitigate this problem. Though they should be adopted with consideration at the outset by selecting a strong password and recovery plan, password managers can be a useful tool to help protect your accounts. Another helpful tool for account security is multi-factor or two-factor authentication. A password-based system uses one factor to protect your account, the password, which is something you know. Multi-factor systems add a second factor. Often, this factor uses something you have rather than something you know. For instance, if you tend to keep your phone with you, the second factor could be a code sent to your phone in a text message or generated by an app you have installed every time you log in. This means that even if an attacker gets a hold of your password, they would still need your phone to get the code so they could get into the account. These systems may not be foolproof, like if an attacker is able to intercept your text messages to get the code, but they make breaking into your account much more difficult. Not all systems offer multi-factor authentication, and for some of those that do, you may need to get your software administrator to enable it, but you should use it wherever possible since it offers valuable account protection. In addition to protecting your own account, it's also important to protect the system as a whole. So let's talk about some best practices for that. One important part of protecting systems is through what's called operational security, or OPSEC for short. OPSEC is all the parts of security that don't rely on hacking the system directly, but rather on manipulating the users of the system or taking advantage of their mistakes. One type of OPSEC attack, known as social engineering, is when attackers try to manipulate users into giving up sensitive information or ignoring a security rule. For instance, someone might call the school pretending to be a student's babysitter, who needs to know when they get out of class because they forgot when they're supposed to pick the student up, but they can't reach the student's parent. In reality, that caller may be a non-custodial parent who's trying to kidnap the student. These types of attacks will often rely on social instincts to be helpful or kind, so it's important to follow security protocols, even if it feels like a small issue. Another common OPSEC attack is shoulder surfing, where someone looks at a user's screen over their shoulder, potentially allowing them to see information they're not authorized to see. To avoid these attacks, only access sensitive information in safe spaces like an office. And even if you're using a privacy screen, try to stay aware of the people seated around you. Unauthorized users can also sometimes access physical documents that contain sensitive information using OPSEC-style attacks. Very commonly, this just means picking up documents left on printers, in recycling bins, or in other unsecured or shared spaces like teachers' lounges or classrooms or even dumpsters. To avoid these types of attacks, pick up printouts promptly after printing them. Shred sensitive information instead of recycling or trashing it, and be careful about where you leave sensitive documents. Even spaces that are meant to be secure can sometimes be accessed by unauthorized users, so it's best to leave documents locked in file cabinets or desk drawers. Another very common type of attack is phishing. Phishing emails try to get you to click on a link or download something onto your computer, usually by pretending to be a legitimate email. Clicking the link or downloading the file will usually install some sort of malware onto your computer, giving the attacker access they need to steal data or harm the system. There are two main kinds of phishing email. General phishes will go to large numbers of people, hoping that at least one of them will mistake it for legitimate. Generally, these try to look like something that would be relevant to lots of folks, like a new time card template from HR or a link to a holiday raffle. Spear phishes are targeted to a specific user or small group of users. If you are the target, the attacker will often try to use something they know about you to make the email seem more legitimate, such as pretending to be from your boss at their non-work email in hopes that this will make you feel more pressure to click on the link. There are a couple things that can help you spot a phishing email, but you should also always reach out to your IT staff or whoever manages your email or other software if you have any doubts about an email. Sometimes you can look at the sending email address. An email that claims to be from your colleague but comes from an address you don't recognize might be a phishing email. This approach isn't foolproof, though, because sometimes attackers can make an email look like it comes from your colleague's email. Another red flag to look out for is an email that references a conversation you don't remember having, like saying, "Here's that file I told you I'd send you about Sarah's IEP," when you don't remember asking for that, or emails that contain urgent deadlines you haven't heard about before, like saying, "We have to get this form to Juan's parents tomorrow so he can graduate. Please review." These types of emails should be treated with caution. In any case, if you aren't sure about an email, talk to your IT staff or whoever manages your organization's email. Additionally, if you have another way to contact the supposed sender, like by phone or in person, check in with them that way to see if they actually sent the email. If they didn't, report the email to IT staff right away. Another way that attackers can access information they're not authorized to get is by intercepting your internet activity. For example, if you log on to your school system to upload grades, an attacker might be able to see the grades while they are being sent from your computer to the main database. Connections between computers, usually called networks, that are open or insecure are one way attackers might be able to do this. Networks without passwords or with only weak passwords are insecure. Even networks with stronger passwords can be an issue if your attacker is on the same network. So something like a coffee shop Wi-Fi network can be a security concern, since you don't know who else is on that same network with you. To avoid these attacks, don't access sensitive information from insecure or shared networks. If you ever access work information from your home internet network, you should make sure that it also has a strong password. Reviewing and changing settings for third-party software and applications, like video conferencing, as well as being mindful about information sharing best practices, are other important ways to protect student information and school systems. For instance, with video conferencing, enabling secure settings like passwords on meetings and waiting rooms can help protect the participants of those meetings from things like Zoom bombing. Also, this can ensure that any information shared in the meeting is only heard by people authorized to hear it, since interlopers can't access the meeting without the password. For something like sharing sensitive information, keeping security in mind can help keep that information from falling into the wrong hands. For instance, email isn't a terribly secure method of communication, as information can be intercepted while in transit, and it is very easy to email the wrong person, either by autofilling the wrong email address or typing the email address incorrectly. Therefore, sensitive information should be shared in a different way, like a secure transfer protocol or a thumb drive. Just be sure to erase it when you're done. That way, if your emails are ever intercepted or leaked, no sensitive data is affected. One more key component of keeping systems secure is making sure your software is up to date. When software providers find out about a security issue in their product, their developers write a fix for that issue called a patch and send it out to all of their users to install. Installing these patches as soon as possible prevents attackers from using that security issue to get into your system. Consequently, it's important to install software updates in a timely way, or, even better, turn on automatic updates so you get all of the fixes as soon as they are available. If you aren't sure how to approach a technical or security problem, you should have a way to reach out for help. Many teachers and administrators are not experts in the technology and systems they use. Consequently, schools need to have channels for teachers and administrators to get help for their technical and security questions. These channels should enable them to ask questions, seek clarification, and resolve issues in a security and privacy-friendly way. If you aren't familiar with how to get help with your technology and systems, reach out to your IT manager or whoever handles your software systems and ask. If you're not sure who that is, check with your boss, other teachers, or whatever other information channels you have in your work. It's best to have a framework for asking questions in place before you need it. We've nearly reached the end of our training. Please stay through to the end for additional resources and contact information. Thank you for participating in our training. We hope it's been a helpful resource in learning useful cybersecurity practices for protecting your community's systems and data. If you want to dig further, we've included additional resources from CDT and other organizations that offer more information about cybersecurity approaches. We've also included our contact information, so feel free to reach out with additional questions or suggestions on this training. And thank you again for joining us.